The crunch of crisp autumn leaves under leather boots, being snuggled under a warm blanket in front of a crackling fireplace, piping hot cup of tea at your side, wearing your fuzziest reading slippers, watching the flicker of a scented candle. Gross. Holding hands with someone or something, and a hint of magic in the air. Dear listeners, today we are examining and getting into a cozier frame of mind here at Keep It Fictional, which is in direct opposition to how horrible it is outside, and it's raining and it's grim and it's gray, and some people are very happy about that, and I'm happy for them and I'm glad about that, but it's horrible. But that's okay. Just like in any other thing, we can retreat to the wonderful world of books to find that little magical spark of coziness that we need. And that's where we're going to go today, Virginia. We are going to read a cozy, magical, there was one other thing that we kind of gave ourselves an out for: cozy, magical, cozy, quirky. Oh, quirky, interesting. A cozy, quirky, magical read here on Keep It Fictional today. I am joined by my book friend Sadie, who's really into this weather today. Liz, what are your feelings about the glum rain?
I was saying to our colleagues earlier that I like the rain, but I don't like being damp. Um, it's contradictory, but yeah.
You're a person who contains multitudes, Liz. All right. Virginia, who I know is also enjoying this weather. How did you feel when you looked out the window this morning, Virginia?
I don't even have to look out, just listen to that sound. Oh, it was just like the best sound to wake up to.
Again, very funny. I hear that sound and just go, "Ugh." Mhm. Yeah. So, Sadie, was it easy to jump out of bed this morning? Just like, oh, I can't wait to get slathered by raindrops.
So easy. Just gives me a little boost to get out of bed.
And Emma, new kind of newest to our podcast, and you haven't been around for all of our arguments about this. What are your feelings on the rain vis-a-vis coziness?
I also enjoy the sound of the rain, but sometimes when I wake up and it's raining and it's very, very dark out, I wake up with a headache. So like I enjoy it, but today in my body I feel like bleh because of the rain. So it's another contradiction where like I love the sound of the rain, but sometimes it makes me feel gross. So
Yes. And so today we are delving into coziness as Isabel Gillies, the author of Cozy, The Art of Arranging Yourself in the World, defines coziness as a state of warmth, which I think is key in the coziness spectrum, and ease that is both physical and emotional. So you feel like emotionally warm, you feel physically warm, a sense of being held in a space that is like safe in direct opposition to the horrible outside. It's familiar and orderly, but not like too perfect. Everything isn't arranged in like just perfect little rows. There's a little bit of like higgledy-pigglediness to it. It's marked by like closeness rather than big and expansive. And it is cultivated by senses beyond just looking. It's all about touch and taste and smell. So I'm very excited to see what our dear book friends have come up with a cozy, quirky read and whether it meets all of these criteria. So, Liz, what is your cozy, quirky, magical read?
Okay, I think my book ticks all the boxes, cozy, quirky, magical, but I'll leave that up to you to decide once you hear all about it. Now, Penny is nervous. She's looking for a job and has landed an interview at the premier store in town. Now she's studying as if cramming for an exam, memorizing facts, and preparing answers to questions she may be asked. On the appointed day, Penny arrives at the store to be interviewed by none other than the store's owner and namesake. But instead of the standard questions she was expecting, Dallergut asks for her thoughts and why she wants to work there. She responds, "You mentioned that some stores lure people in by offering excess sleep, purely for pleasure, more sleep than anyone would need. I've heard that your store is different. You only offer dreams that underscore the importance of reality, just the right amount of control without overstepping." And that is how Penny was hired at the Dallergut Dream Department Store, a multi-level shop specializing in dreams. In the Dallergut Dream Department Store, written in Korean by Miye Lee and translated by Sandy Joosun Lee, everything revolves around sleep and, you guessed it, dreams. The town in which the story takes place is a shopping destination for people in their subconscious rest who will have no recollection of the things they see once they wake. It is filled with shops selling dreams, with the most revered of these shops owned by Dallergut. Each floor specializes in different types of dreams for different types of clientele. Everything from flying dreams to childhood memories to dreams of reaching stardom and even dreams for animals. Along the way, Penny meets and learns more about the customers and their motivation for purchasing specific types of dreams, her quirky colleagues, and even the dream designers who have a rock star level following. The Dallergut Dream Department Store will appeal to you if you enjoy other magical realism stories, like Before the Coffee Gets Cold, which is a series by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, or even the works of Studio Ghibli. If you're looking for a cozy and whimsical look at the subconscious dream state and how our dreams can influence our waking life, you may want to give this one a try. So again, that's the Dallergut Dream Department Store by Miye Lee.
Of course I approve, Liz. That ticks all of the boxes, except for doing laundry, which I find like very stressful. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Perfect. I think it did meet all of the things. It's like it's got that sensory stuff. It's like a little dreamlike. It's not too expansive and it feels warm. All right. All right. Liz passes. Okay. Next up is the person for whom I'm sure this subject was perhaps the most difficult to find a book on. Really, really. She's shaking her head, but we all know it's true. So, Virginia, what cozy read did you come up with?
Yeah, so having done a star sign episode just last week, I'm just going to use that as a convenient excuse for everything now. Last week I talked about how, as a Pisces, we like to immerse ourselves in things, right? We like to be bombarded with those strong feelings and those extreme emotions. We need to be at one with the bugs, and we need to swim in all those strong feelings. So I think by definition, a cozy fiction like Corinne described earlier is supposed to be comforting, because part of the reason why they're comforting is because they're familiar, right? Like they're like exactly what you expect to get. They're not too shocking, nothing too surprising. Everything just fits. And that's the charm of a cozy. That's the appeal of it. So it just doesn't quite work for me as well as you can imagine. So it was very, very tempting to just, as I was telling Emma, just go read a manga, because manga is those magical format that I can read pretty much any type of story and any type of subject. If I can read and care about a manga about American football, which I despises, I feel like I could do anything in a manga. So I was so tempted to do that, but I didn't. I persevere on the book that I started a few weeks ago that I read a third. I'm like, I don't want to. And then, but I pinned myself down and I made myself read it and I did it. So it probably, I hope that people will give me a pass on I probably hit 2 out of the 3. I don't know. Quirky was a requirement. So I was just like, I don't think this was quirky, but it definitely shows up on those lists when they say cozy fiction anyway. So my cozy magical book takes place in a photo studio, a place where everyone visits when they die. When you arrive, there will be boxes and boxes of photos waiting for you. Photos of your life, maybe more accurately, your memories. Before you can move on to the next stage, whatever that is, you're supposed to pick one photo for each year that you're alive. And then you will take all those photos and they will be made into a lantern. And when the lantern is complete, you'll be asked to watch it as it starts spinning. And as your life flashes before you with the photos, you will look kind of back at your life. And when you reach the end, you will see this bright white light and you will disappear from the photo studio, presumably having moved on to whatever that next stage is. As you're looking through the photos, if you find a specific memory that looks kind of faded, it means that it's a memory that you really do treasure. It's a memory that you recall so frequently that it's kind of worn with use, basically. And so if you come upon a moment like that, you want to include this moment on your lantern, but the photo just doesn't look very good. What you can do is you'll be allowed to go back to pick one moment in your life, just one, that you can go back to that day and you can spend the day and retake the photos so that when we can develop into a new photo and it will be a rich memory that you can then use for your lantern. So this is the setup of the book called lost my photo. Anyway, this is the setup of the book called The Lantern of Lost Memories, and it is by Sanaka Hiiragi and translated by Jesse Kirkwood Iragi. And it is a book that we spend time with one such photo studio where Hirasaki works. Now, Hirasaki has been working there for quite a while, but his arrival at the photo studio is a little bit different from what I just described, because instead of getting boxes and boxes of photos, he only has one. A photo of him staring into the camera, grinning, standing in front of what looks like to be a forest. It's kind of hard to tell because of the way the photo was taken. You can't quite see what is behind him. You can't quite see what he's wearing. So it's really hard to tell, like, what era did he came from? Like, where does he live? There was no clues in the photo at all. And not only that, just having that one photo, it kind of bugs Hirasaki a little bit because he keeps thinking, is it that my life is so uneventful? Is it that they were just so not memorable that I don't even have any memories at all? He can't remember anything before he came to the photo studio. And that is, that makes him sad quite a bit, especially when the people that arrive start asking him about his story. He really doesn't have a story to tell. Even though Hirasaki's story is not necessarily the focus of the book, this is, as many cozy fiction does. You won't be left hanging. You do find out why Hirasaki only has one photo and why he has no memories at all, and sort of that story sort of underlies the rest of it. But the book does focus on the three people who came to the photo studio. The first story is about Hatsue, who is 92 years old. So she lives, quite a long life, and it was kind of an expected death. So she wasn't too surprised to find herself here. And so Hirasaki being the guide, like he's the person who's supposed to guide you through this process, and because, very often when you come to the photo studio, book up in an unknown place, it might be a little bit of a shock to find out that you're dead, and then not really knowing what's going on, and then so Hirasaki is the guide to help you through that process. We'll show you how to pick your photos, and then we'll also accompany you back to that moment in life, if you want to go back and retake photos, and then he will develop them for you, and he'll make the lantern, and he'll watch you the whole process with you. So Hatsue doesn't really quite need a lot of help, she kind of started looking through her photos. And there's one moment that she wants to go back to. It's to retake a photo of a bus. Hatsue lives in post-war Japan as a nursery school teacher, a much needed one because in her town, there's lots of working parents who don't have a lot of money. So they really rely on the school to take care of the kids while they work. Unfortunately, the school is being evicted out of the building that they were in, and they can no longer use it. And everybody's panicking. They don't know what to do because now they have the kids that, no one can take care of. And so Hatsue, along with all the parents, decide to do a fundraising so that they can get some money, maybe to find a new place for the school. Unfortunately, despite how successful the little festival that they did, they never will have enough money to actually get a place. So they were all very, very concerned until they come across a bus. And the arrival of this special bus is the day that Hatsue decides to return to retake that photo. Now, the first story is the longest in the book, and I would say probably fits sort of that cozy fiction vibe the most. It's the most, I would say, predictable in many ways. It follows the pattern exactly what I expect to find in this kind of cozy magical photo studio story. It's okay for me. Like it wasn't very like it didn't resonate as much. I think it's also because the first story also requires a lot more exposition, because you have to explain how this photo studio works. So it feels a little bit of a slow start. It could also be because I'm just grumpy that I have to read a cozy fiction. So that could also be it. But the second story is probably my favorite. It's called The Hero and the Mouse, and it's a story about Waniguchi. Waniguchi is a Yakuza, so a Japanese gang member, and he was stabbed to death. And so he showed up angry. He showed up, like not knowing what happened, and he could care less about these stupid photos that he's supposed to like deal with. So he needs a little bit more encouragement from Hirasaki. There's more work that he has to do to get him to actually go through the photos so that he can leave the studio. Because if you don't do this part, you can't leave. With the help of a couple beers, he warmed up a little bit. Once he started, though, he did find a moment that he wants to relive. A photo of him and then a person that he refers to as the mouse and a little boy. And so they went back to that day and we learned about Waniguchi's story. He is, as I mentioned, a Yakuza, and they have set up a store as kind of a front, and they never intend to sell anything. But in order to keep up the appearance, they're like, oh, okay, we'll be a repair shop and we'll just hire some guy to be the repair guy, even though we know that in this neighborhood, nobody is going to come and find us anyway, because we're not going to advertise that we're a repair shop. They end up hiring the mouse. That's the name that they give him. The mouse is very, very, very good at fixing things. And the way he does it is that he has to, doesn't matter like whether it's just a tiny little thing that is wrong with whatever it is, he will have to take everything apart completely and then put everything back together. And then it will be as good as new. He's very methodical about it, and he knows exactly how much time it would take. But the mouse is not very good at dealing with people. He doesn't have a lot of experience doing that. And he doesn't really understand the nuances of like a social interaction. So as simple as saying good morning, he doesn't understand what's the point of saying good morning. And of course, for a Yakuza, that's like, you're disrespecting me if you don't greet me in the morning. So they have to explain it to him in a way that makes him understand. Like, and basically Waniguchi's like, when you say good morning to me, it's like you're fixing me, right? Like that's how it works. So say good morning to me. And so every day they will have this ritual. Like every time, the mouse sees them, they'll say good morning. And he'll say, you're broken, but now I have fixed you. And so that's something that they say to each other every time. And weirdly, pretty soon, everybody starts showing up with broken toasters, broken radios. They don't know where these people heard about this, but everybody starts showing up with stuff, and the mouse fixes them all. And if he ever encounters something that he doesn't know, he would do so much research. He would go to the library, and he would try to figure out how it works. And Waniguchi is fascinated by the way the mouse thinks, the mouse works. And despite himself, he starts to develop this, relationship with the mouse. He starts to grow to really care for him. And he really wants him to do well, and he really wants to protect him. But then one day a boy shows up with something that is so broken, so torn to pieces, that there is absolutely no way that anyone can fix it. But the mouse is going to try. And that is the moment when Waniguchi decides to go back, because he wants to remember that as the last thing that he sees on his lantern. And this is one of those stories that has a very fitting ending. It's like exactly what you expect down to the last conversation. You can imagine that this is how it's going to go. But again, nothing wrong with that. If it does well, then it works. The last story, on the other hand, is the hardest to read, and this is the one that I didn't expect, because when we were talking about like magical, cozy, quirky, and all that, this last story deals with a little bit of a darker subject, and that again I wasn't really expecting it. Usually, the boxes of photos are brought to the studio by Yama, the delivery guy, and he's always so cheerful. He's always ready to make a joke. He always ready to talk about the people that will be coming based on the photos or based on how many boxes they have. However, today when he shows up, he is visibly like nervous. He's very he seems like really like concerned, and you can tell that he doesn't really want to hand over the files. He doesn't really want to hand over the very small amount of photos that this person has, and it seems like it could be someone who hasn't lived for very long. And Yama just keeps saying to Hirasaki, like, okay, don't forget, you can't change the past. Just make that cup of tea for them, and just don't forget, you can't change anything. Okay, this is the rule. So Hirasaki knows this is going to be tricky, and a little girl shows up in his studio. Her name is Mitsuru, someone who looks extremely frightened, extremely reluctant to interact. And you can tell that it's not just because they're shocked that they are dead, but there's something else much deeper going on. And so right away, Hirasaki knows that this is not someone who are going to go pick their own moments to go back to, perhaps because there's not a lot of moments that they could choose. And so Hirasaki decides, you know what, I'm going to help you pick a date. We're going to pick a date. And he tells Mitsuru that we're going to have a fun day out, okay? First of all, we're going to go to the convenience store. We're going to grab our favorite snacks. And then we're going to go on a hike. We're going to have a picnic. We can take our camera along and we can take all these great pictures of the mountains. It is going to be a really, really fun day. And I will show you how to do different things, like how we can use the lens of the camera to start a fire, and then we can roast some sweet potatoes together, okay? It's going to be great. And they did have a really good day, and Mitsuri slowly warms up. And then when they head back to the studio, Hirasaki is going to develop the photos, and Mitsuri was drinking her tea when the cup fell and broke. And suddenly Mitsuru starts disappearing. And Hirasaki sees that and tries to tell Mitsuru one last thing, but before he can finish his sentence, Mitsuru was gone. And then we're taken back to Mitsuru's life, and it seems like maybe she's not actually dead, or something might have happened, and we learn more about what her life is like and what happens after her short visit at the photo studio. It's interesting to see, and that story, ties back to Hirasaki's story. And so you get sort of an ending to all the different things that all the different mysteries about his life. I feel a little bit like not quite qualified to comment on my book just because I feel like I haven't read enough cozy fiction to really compare this one with the others. But I would say that if you like books that have episodic stories, that this one works really well. It also, as I mentioned, because everything sort of ties well together, so you're not leave hanging. It's also, I think, part of the thing about cozy fiction very often is they're shorter, so they're really quick reads. So if you're looking for something just like a quick read, that this will be a good book to choose from. As I mentioned, I was a little bit taken back by some of the darker aspects, but I think ultimately the stories does have sort of a positive ending, so to speak, but it does have some moments in there that gets a little dark. And did the person who cries at everything cry at this book? Of course I did. And so I can't tell whether it's just me that usually does crying or whether there's actually a book that really does tug at your heartstrings a little bit. I think I really like the Raniguchi story. I think that was the one. I'm glad that I got past the first one, that I persevere and kind of end up, finishing the book. So yeah, so that is my pick for you. So this is the trying to find the picture here, The Lantern of Lost Memories, and it is by Sanaka Hiiragi and translated by Jesse Kirkwood Iragai.
You tried. I think you really honestly tried. I can sense the trying there. I can sense the effort there. And yeah, it's always a little bit surprising when one of those lighter, because even the cover kind of feels like a lighter hearted thing if it kind of goes a little left of field, perhaps. Yeah. All right. We are going to swing over to Emma. Emma, what was your cozy read?
I do like cozy fiction, so I had no issue picking out a book for this week, especially because a lot of them are kind of cat themed, which is very Emma. So I had a good time with this one. I joked that my book is should be a part of the star sign episode. Welcome to Star Signs Part 2. My book has lots of astrology in it. So if you're not into astrological readings, or if you don't buy into that kind of stuff, maybe skip to the next book, friend, because this book is heavy-handed in the astrology, which I didn't quite expect. I expected it to be more about the cats and the coffee and that kind of stuff. So it kind of took me by surprise. But it has heartwarming romances in it. It has like an assortment of delicious desserts and sweet treats and teas and coffees that are served to people. So I think it does fit into that what Corinne was talking about earlier about how a lot of these cozy vibes, these cozy books are very much oriented in like the smells and creating this cozy atmosphere. And my book, of course, has talking cats. So what's not to love about that? This book is brand new. It's brand new to our collection. We just got our copy at the library yesterday. It's a bestseller in Japan and it was published in English at the end of August. So if you're interested in checking it out, I recommend putting a hold on it since we have the book here at the library now. But my book for this week is called The Full Moon Coffee Shop. And it was written in Japanese by Mai Mochizuki and translated also by Jesse Kirkwood, who translated the book that Virginia just talked about. So this book has kind of a similar story structure to a lot of the other cozy fiction. It's divided into a couple different short stories. So kind of similar to Virginia's book, as well as books like Before the Coffee Gets Cold or What You Were Looking For is in the Library. So it follows three different stories, three different characters, or sometimes groups of characters who encounter the same mysterious magical coffee shop. The Full Moon Coffee Shop has no fixed location. Instead, it appears kind of wherever or whenever it's needed, where adrift young people around Kyoto will encounter it and experience a much needed change in their lives. At the coffee shop, customers do not place their own orders. They do not get to look at a menu. Instead, the food and the drinks are brought to them by the master of the shop, and each selection of food or drinks for each customer is curated based on what that individual guest needs, based on where they are at their lives, based on what kind of problems they're facing, or what type of advice they might be seeking, whether they know it or not. So the master curates what he brings to the guests kind of based on their own individual personalities. And the guests at this coffee shop are served by walking, talking, anthropomorphic cats. Each of them are named after a Greek or Roman god or named after one of the planets. So the first of the three guests that we meet is Mizuki, who is a television scriptwriter in her 40s who's kind of past the peak of her career. She feels like she's past her prime. Many of the shows that she wrote in her 20s and her 30s were huge successes, but lately she can't seem to come up with a story that sticks with her audience. She's turned to writing scripts for mobile dating games instead, since she hasn't been able to find success in television lately. But she's been struggling to feel motivated in her career. She recently kind of abandoned her like big, beautiful, curated apartment for a smaller studio because she couldn't afford it anymore. So she's kind of in this life shift where a lot of the things that she really loved about her life, her successful career, the home that she created for herself, she's lost a lot of that. And after her most recent rejection from a director from a show that she tried to pitch, Mizuki stumbles upon what appears to be a pop-up coffee shop on the riverbank in Kyoto. She enters the shop where she's greeted not by a waiter, but by a human-sized talking tortoiseshell cat. The cat introduces himself as the master of the cafe, and when Mizuki attempts to order a coffee, he tells her that guests don't get to choose their orders at this cafe. Instead, he carefully selects food and drink for them based on what he thinks they require. So, more than a little confused, Mizuki kind of goes along with the cat. She assumes that she's dreaming. She's like, all right, we'll just roll with it. We'll see what goes on. Um, and she's served the most delicious stack of pancakes with syrup and with milky black tea. And she gets into this conversation with the master about her recent struggles with her script writing career and recent struggles with her romantic life. And while offering his advice, the master of the cafe asks if he can read her star chart. So this is where we shift into the astrology. She just assumes that he means her horoscope. So she's like, yeah, I'm a Pisces. What does it say about Pisces today? But the master assures her that there's a lot more to it than just that. He opens up this pocket watch, and in the sky above them, a giant star chart appears in the constellations. And he begins explaining her chart, going into how all these different aspects of it, not only her sun sign, which is Pisces, that's kind of the sign that most people know, but also like her phase of life. There's these different phases that are connected to different planets, which I didn't know. I learned a lot about astrology through this book. And even the astrological age, which is like a time period that lasts like thousands of years, how all these different things about her chart affect her life in different ways. So I know we all learned last week that I'm kind of the designated person who knows about astrology here at the library. But a lot of what was talked about in this book kind of went over my head. Like, I'm assuming that I haven't done enough research. I haven't looked into the author, looked into Mai Mochizuki at all, but I assume she's probably an astrologer because clearly she knows what she's talking about. And I learned quite a bit about like all these different aspects of star charts that I had never heard of before, or that I like had heard of but hadn't really done research into through reading this book. Like I know a little bit about each sign. I know a little bit about each planet. So like if a certain sign connects to a certain planet, I kind of know what that means. But other than that, like I know nothing about astrological ages. I know nothing about houses. I know nothing about any of that. Which is covered really, really in depth in the Master of the Cafe's analysis of each of these guests' charts. So the master explains that somebody's astrological chart is kind of like a compass that shows both their past and their future, and it reveals the most fundamental attributes about that person. The star chart is used to explain why certain things have happened in these characters' lives or why certain things have happened at certain points in their lives. Why they face certain struggles, but it doesn't really tell them what they can do about that. It just gives them like a framework for how to better understand the things that they're dealing with. And then they can then take from that information what they want and change their lives based on it. So what I like about these types of books, these like cozy Japanese or Korean magical realism books, is that they're less about how the magic itself works and more about how these like mystical magical places bring people together, about like the changes that people are able to bring to their lives based on the connections that they make through these encounters. Not the magic itself that changes their lives. But in this book, it's a lot less about like the human connection that people make. Like they're not interacting with people and then kind of learning from those experiences. It's more just like, here, let me tell you about your star chart. Now you can understand your life better. It leans very, very heavily into the astrology of it all, which I didn't mind as much because I do buy into astrology. But if that's not your thing, then this might not be the book for you. I didn't mind it because like I buy into the fact that a character who was losing important emails to his junk folder or who was missing trains because of Mercury retrograde, like I believe that that's totally possible. But some reviewers, I was reading some reviews online, and some people thought that the heavy focus on astrology was a little trite. So just kind of go in with that in mind if you're thinking about reading this book. So each guest of the coffee shop takes the master's analysis and kind of chooses to do with it what they want based on what they learned about themselves, based on their newfound understanding of their star chart. So in the end, these characters do make their own decisions to change their lives based on what they learned, but it's all kind of solely based on what the master told them about their chart. And yeah, like I said, I prefer these types of books when they're more rooted in the emotional journeys of the characters rather than just like listening to an astrologer tell you what you should do based on your chart and being like, yeah, that sounds right. So that kind of, it wasn't my favorite of all the magical realism books I've read that kind of fall into this category. The premise was very sweet. I enjoyed the cats themselves, but like I said, a little bit too much astrology, which is kind of funny coming from me. I will say though that each of the characters who visits the Full Moon coffee shop are connected by an event that happened in their past. A lot of these characters are in their 20s and 30s, and they all actually knew each other in primary school. And there was a big event that happened back then that's revealed near the end of the book, that kind of brings this more like heartwarming connection to them. It's really, really beautifully done. It also kind of connects the characters to the cats themselves, which is kind of cool. So these people are, there is still quite a bit of emotional value in like the human connection that comes about from this book. But you have to get past these long astrological readings as each character visits the cafe and gets their chart read in order to get to that point. So I'd recommend this book to people who like these types of cozy magical realism books. If you liked the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, or if you liked books like the Kamogawa Food Detectives, you might enjoy this one. If you are interested in astrology, then I would highly recommend this book. It does lean pretty heavily into that. Or if you're kind of like me, you're into it, but you want to learn a little bit more about the different aspects of the star chart besides just like the basic signs, the basic planets, and what those mean when they're connected, then I think you could definitely get something of value out of this. So I don't understand like all these different aspects of star charts, but I definitely learned something. So if that sounds like something that you might be into, then you can read, I'm going to pull the cover up, The Full Moon Coffee Shop by Mai Mochizuki and translated by Jesse Kirkwood.
Yes, I'm so glad that you mentioned the astrology book because I was actually going to buy that book based on the premise, and now I am thrilled that I didn't. Yeah. Perfect. All right. So we come to the the 3/5 point of our podcast where we're going to play the game Cozy or Not Cozy. I'm going to go through a list of things that people find cozy, and I want you to sound off as to whether you think it is cozy or not. Liz, you're not allowed to say it depends. There are only two answers. Is it cozy or is it not cozy? All right. First up is fireplaces. Cozy or not cozy?
Cozy.
Cozy. Cozy.
Love a fireplace. Love them.
How can you say not cozy to fireplace?
Because they smell.
Oh, okay. So you're the not cozy one. Okay, got it.
But they smell like beautiful, cozy campfire.
Okay. I also hate campfires.
They smell
As
like
someone who
outdoors.
does,
Not all fireplaces
as someone who does not like
smell.
camping, I love the smell of like fireplace smell. I do. I think it's back from like because my parents, not right now, but a lot of my parents' houses have had fireplaces. And I just think of going home for Christmas and just like having the Christmas tree and snuggling up with a blanket and there being like the fireplace and then oftentimes, ironically, the fire log on the TV as well. And you just look at both of them and compare. But it's just yeah, I love the smell. I love the feel. Very cozy.
I think you just need to clean your fireplace, Corinne, because I don't think my fireplace
How
smells.
dare you assume I have a fireplace?
I don't know. Well, you're the one who said that it smells, so apparently some place that you have stayed at has a... Because they don't... Anyway.
It's like burning because it's burning, right? And like part of your brain is like, oh, you shouldn't be sleeping in front of this. And then you get too cold and it's uncomfortable, like too hot, too cold, depending on your proximity from the fireplace. There's just like no happy medium. Okay. Jazz music, cozy, not cozy.
Depends on the jazz. There's so many different types of jazz. Are we talking like
no,
experimental,
Emma,
progressive jazz?
It does it. You have to say cozy, not cozy. There's no, it depends.
Because like I wouldn't call the weather report cozy, but there's other jazz that would be. Back me up, Virginia.
No, it's either cozy or not cozy.
Not
I'll say
cozy.
cozy then.
I'm going to say it. Not cozy.
Cozy.
Not cozy.
Interesting.
What's your answer, Corinne? You can't skip it.
I find jazz music upsetting.
I hope my friend Jillian doesn't listen to this episode.
Just do. I tried. I really tried. Yeah, I can appreciate it at an intellectual level, but I find listening to it stressful. Yeah. All right. Omelets. Cozy, not cozy.
I'm gonna go for not cozy. I don't think eggs are cozy.
Like a cozy little omelet. Is an omelet a cozy food?
No.
Yes.
Also, no, I like omelets, but they're not... I wouldn't describe them as cozy. So, no.
Liz, you said yes, though?
Yeah, because I think brunch and like you've slept in and somebody's made you breakfast or brunch, I suppose. And you're having warm eggs and it's tasty.
I have to say the idea of eating warm food and drinking warm beverages after having a child is actually very, very cozy and appealing. It's very rare that that happens sometimes.
All right. I hate all eggs, so omelets are disgusting. Okay. Which leads me actually quite nicely to our next one. Breakfast in bed, cozy or not cozy?
Not cozy.
Not
That's
cozy.
disgusting.
Crumbs.
Nope, nope, nope.
So messy.
Wait, is this the one we all agree on?
Liz, what do you think?
Oh, I said no, no, heck, no, no, no.
We all have standards. Disgusting. Disgusting. Oh, yeah. When everyone's like, oh, and then I take my little tray and I eat it in my bed. I'm like, where you sleep? Where you put your like vulnerable body? Anyways, gross. Leaves. Like the changing of the leaves, the crunching of the leaves, cozy, not cozy.
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 Also, the smell of the leaves.
Virginia.
You go first. You haven't answered either.
Oh yeah, I don't care for them.
I give that dry. Give that completely dry, right? But they're usually wet, and I don't like it.
That sounds like an it depends kind of an answer.
Come on, Virginia, cozy, not cozy.
Well, like maybe your question has to be dry leaves, then I can explain to you that it's cozy,
It's the bigger category of autumnal leaves.
not cozy.
Excellent. All right. Gilmore Girls, cozy, not cozy.
Sadie. Cozy.
It's like my ideal comfort show. When I can't sleep at night, I just put it on Netflix and listen to it, and it helps me fall asleep because I've watched it so many times that I don't need to pay attention. So it is the coziest for me.
I think it's cozy, but I find the character of Rory Gilmore extremely not cozy. I find her annoying.
She's a horrible person.
Really? Do you really want to get into it? Because Lorelai has made some extremely questionable decisions. And then as an adult, the second time watching it, I'm like, she's the villain of the entire show.
Lorelai's a terrible mom.
I think
You
we can
heard it
probably agree that
here.
neither of them are great.
I'm going to also say not cozy because that show really stresses me out because they make bad choices. And that stresses me out when it's like, why would you drop out of Yale and steal a boat? That's not cozy. All right, listen, Virginia.
As you can imagine, never watch it, so not cozy, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with Virginia, and everything I've heard about it so far here is not compelling me to watch it.
Yeah, we didn't really sell it quite well. All right, cozy, not cozy. Cafes on a rainy day.
100% cozy, obviously.
Cozy, cozy.
Cozy.
Yeah, cozy. Green.
Your socks are wet. Everyone's wet. Everyone smells like wet dogs.
You have waterproof shoes. How are your socks still wet?
I walk with emphasis. So I walk too hard. All right. And last but not least, our final cozy, not cozy. Hot chocolate.
Hey,
Cozy.
Corinne, before you do that, is there one that you actually said cozy to yet? Because I think whatever that the last one it has to be something that you think is cozy.
Oh, okay, good. Hold on. Let me revise my list. Blankets.
Because it can be all not cozy for you. That's just like, okay, blankets, everyone. Blankets.
Okay, no. We'll switch this. I would like you to think of your coziest object that you own. What is your ultimate cozy object? And I do have an answer for that in that it is my hoodie. It's my favorite thing that I just want to cocoon in all night long. So yes, there we go. That's the final Final quest of Cozy Not Cozy. What is your coziest object? What brings you the most cozy?
I have one. I have a very fuzzy blanket that has haiku characters on it as little birds. It's yeah, Virginia. I should bring it in to show you. It's my favorite thing ever. So yeah, that's my coziest object. But it does come with a caveat. For some reason, my cat Rukia is obsessed with biting it. So if I have it on me, she will like come up and take a chomp out of my and it's awful. But the blanket itself is very cozy.
But what's left of your blanket now?
Oh, she doesn't like bite through the blanket and destroy it. She just like it's so weird because my other cat like likes to cozy on it and make his little biscuits, and Rukia like likes to bite soft things. So she tries to bite it, but she bites my leg instead. So yeah. So like I love this blanket so much, and I used to use it all the time before I adopted this demon child, but now that I have demon child in my house, I can never use my haiku blanket anymore.
I thought you were gonna say you love this blanket so much. I offer them a leg instead. Instead of the blanket. Bite my leg,
I
please.
sacrificed my leg for this blanket.
Mine is also a fuzzy blanket. I think it was actually one of the like Indigo chapters ones that like they always have those deals on where if you buy a certain amount, then you get it for $25. My mother-in-law gave it to us a while ago. And it's just like fleecy kind of on the bottom and then just like fuzz on the top. And yeah, it is very, very cozy. It's Evie's favorite blanket. She'll always ask for the fuzzy blanket. And I think she'll ask for the most fuzzy blanket. And then we know that that's the one she's talking about to just like sit on. And yeah, Kara loves it too. Everyone.
Okay, my stuff. Oh, go ahead, Liz.
I think we have the same blanket, Sadie. I feel like anybody who shopped the Chapters Indigo has the same, at least one blanket in their life from that store.
I think Kate has that blanket, the super fuzzy blanket.
Upselling works, apparently. My stuffed owl would be my coziest thing. He's in a Calgary Flames jersey. His name is Ali Jokinen. Liz knows. Liz knows what I'm referring to. Yeah. And so, like hugging that owl is the coziest thing.
Liz, was your answer the blanket?
I suppose it was. Anything fleece, the blanket, this hoodie, not hoodie copyright, but a fleece hoodie.
All right, well, that brings to an end Cozy Not Cozy. But of course, the coziest thing of all is a cozy read, which brings me to the book that I frantically searched for last night. As Virginia heard my yowl of furiousness, as I realized it also had to be magical, but that's fine. That is a genre that there is a lot of things. And I found, brace yourselves, Virginia and Sadie, a romantasy book that well fulfills this brief. What? Yeah, it does. It totally does. Yeah, 100%. It's a cozy little romantasy with like higher body count than I had previously thought. Oh, I did it. I did it. I looked up cozy magic and I did it. I nailed it. I got it on my first try. And I'm also bringing some CanCon to the table. So, ha! Yeah, apparently this author lives on Vancouver Island, which I did not know until I got to the very end of the book. And isn't that a nice, pleasant surprise? It's also part of a 3-book series, which I also didn't realize because I'm like, why aren't they making out more? And it's because they'll make out more in the next books. But that's not important. So I did it. I did this topic so good, and I'm so proud of myself. I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries, a novel by Heather Fawcett. And I think Sadie is our biggest like fairy denier on this podcast. Not that I don't know whether you know that or think they exist or not, but I is just like ambivalent about the concept of them in romance. I think of course in all things I support Sadie. But I also get it. And reading this book, I was like, oh, she's gonna fall in love with like a member of the Fae. And I don't know why I didn't put those two things together. But I got halfway through the book and I realized, oh, it's a book about the fairy, so she's gonna fall in love with a fairy, and I don't really care. But that's okay. That's on me. That is on me that I do not particularly find this genre as interesting as others. But the main character and the writing was enough that I kept going, and not just because I was compelled to finish it for this podcast. So everyone agrees that Cambridge professor Emily Wilde is brilliant. She is one of the utmost authorities on the fairy, the folk, or the fae. She can write a footnote like no one's business, has read every book in the library, and is determined to complete her Encyclopaedia of Fairies and that it will be the definitive work on the subject. While everyone can agree that she is a brilliant academic, she is perhaps not the easiest human being to get along with. She is, and we're going to say this kindly, curmudgeonly. She cares only about her research to the detriment of every single living thing around her, except for her dog Shadow, who's the real MVP of this book. She has a hard time making small talk with people. She's a little bit repressed. And she really doesn't have time for anyone who's not contributing anything to her aforementioned encyclopedia. While this has served her well in academia, it might not serve her as well in the field. She is taking a trip to, and I apologize so much, Hrafnsvik. It's an Icelandic place, and I tried. I really tried. Hrafnsvik? Hrafnsvik. Hrafnsvik. There's a lot of consonants and precious few vowels. So she is going to a remote island in the Nordic North, possibly Iceland, I think, to examine and find out more about their particular brand of fae there, so she again can have the best encyclopedia that has ever been. She meets the call them gruff townspeople and does not endear herself to them, which is fine because, like all of America's Next Top Model contestants, she isn't there to make friends. She is there to complete her research. However, woe betide, her academic rival, Wendell Bramley, shows up. And he's good looking and charming, and the townspeople love him. And they want to tell him all their stories about the Fae folk. And suddenly she finds herself very much needing a little bit of boost in the social skills department. Oh, Wendell Bramley. He charms all the people and he keeps getting in the way of her research. She is frustrated and feeling tumultuous amount of feelings. When she starts going to look for the hidden ones, she starts to realize that this tiny little town has more than one secret. They aren't just hiding the folk, they are hiding some very powerful creatures. And this Wendell Bramley, as annoying as he is, isn't perhaps exactly what he seems. And maybe these feelings that she's feeling are not the feelings that she thought she was feeling. This is a very charming kind of like Victorian pastiche fairy story, perfect for people who like Theodora Goss, like The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, a little like Naomi Novak, the very secret society of irregular witches, although they were very like irregular secrets and very secret witches, or who really loved the Amelia Peabody series by Elizabeth Peters. Emily is a charming, well, to me, charming as the reader. If I met her, I'd probably find her insufferable. A very charming protagonist in that she really, really does only care about her research, even in the face of like murder. She is not fussed by that. It is very kind of like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, in that it's kind of like an academic take on magic, an academic take on the fairies, except the fairies are very real, and by gum do they love a murder. It gets kind of very like fairy tale-ish at the end. It's very slow burn, very like sunshine, grumpy pants. So yes, it is, I think, to be a trilogy of books. I know the second one is out, and I might actually read it because I do kind of want to I want to make sure they make out. And then yeah, the third book I believe is coming out or has come out. I was just kind of scrolling through her Instagram. Where she posts a lot of like the very cute fan art and pictures of her cat, which I was disappointed of because I really love the dog in this book. And I feel betrayed. But this does have all of like the cozy vibes, except for the murder. And that it's kind of like fairy tale-y. The little village has all the little village charms. It's got all the weird, quirky, like townspeople, just like in Gilmore Girls. Again, the entire show should have been about Miss Patty. Forget everyone else. And it is like there's candles and like nice cooking and like academia, and everyone's wearing like really warm clothing, which was great because it was freezing last night and I was under 3 blankets. So this was like the perfect read for this. So if you're looking for kind of like a Victorian, academic, light, snarky romance, but with minimal makeouts, then you can definitely try Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries by Canadian author, BC author, Heather Fawcett. Are you proud of me, Fiona? Are you proud? Are you proud of me? I tried. All right. And next, I think we're going to swing it over to the Queen of Cozy in the way that I think you appreciate a rainy day plus all of like the accoutrements, like in a very deep way. And you like Gilmore Girls, which gives you like just like a slight edge over Virginia. All right, Sadie, what is your quirky, cozy pick?
All right. So yes, I do enjoy a good cozy feel in general, a good cozy feel book. I don't tend to read too much that would fit into the quirky category, usually, I would say. But I did find one that I think was a very good match for me. It has magic, it has cats, it has books, and it even talks about tea. So this is The Cat Who Saved Books by Sosuke Natsukawa, translated from Japanese by Louise Heal Kawai. And our story begins with Rintaro Natsuki. Rintaro is a teenage bookworm who, since losing both of his parents as a child, has been raised by his grandfather, who is the owner of a small used bookstore. But now his grandfather has also just died, and Rintaro isn't sure what he's supposed to do now. The only family that he has left is an aunt who he doesn't really know, but who has been tasked with now taking care of him. He has also been left his grandfather's bookshop, Natsuki Books. He's filled with grief and a sense of kind of disjointedness. And so Rintaro stops going to school and instead spends his days puttering around the bookshop, cleaning the stoop, dusting the books in the same way that his grandfather would every morning before opening the shop. Despite a couple of his classmates coming by to express their concern over him not attending school, Rintaro won't change this new routine that he has created, preferring to live a solitary life for as long as he is going to be allowed. However, his time for isolation is quickly coming to an end, as in a few days, he will be moving in with his aunt and leaving his home and his grandfather's bookshop behind. So one day, Rintaro is a little bit surprised when he finds a cat in the bookshop, an orange and white tabby who he has never seen before. He's even more surprised when the cat starts talking to him, calling him Mr. Proprietor and telling him that he desperately needs Rintaro's help. Books are in trouble, and only Rintaro can save them. For some reason, Rintaro decides to follow the cat through the back aisles of the bookshop, where they now seem to go on forever. He is brought to a large mansion that is filled with beautiful, pristine, new, shiny books that have all been locked away for no one to see. Inside, he finds a man who, while it is clear he loves books, is causing them to disappear from the world by locking them all away. He will read a book and never think about it or read it again, moving instantly on to the next. He keeps his library locked up and doesn't let anyone else read or even see the books that he has. This is a man that Rintaro must somehow convince to free his books. This is the first labyrinth that Rintaro must face. The first person who, in their own way, is causing books to disappear for good. The first person who Rintaro must convince to change their ways. Each different labyrinth poses a new challenge, each one asking Rintaro to both look inside himself to determine what he believes in, but also to look out into the world and start engaging with those around him, to show empathy, and maybe to slowly come out of his isolation. Books have tremendous power, Rintaro's grandfather would always say. It is now up to Rintaro to figure out exactly what that power is and how he can explain it to those who wish to remove books from the world. Rintaro is not alone in his tasks. The orange tabby is there for each new labyrinth, although they are not always allowed to join him or help him. He's also joined by his classmate Seo, after her compassion towards Rintaro and the world allows her to see into this mystical world the labyrinths are a part of. As Rintaro and Seo face each labyrinth, Rintaro is brought more and more out of his isolation, gaining confidence in the person who he has become and learning that he may in fact have what it takes to save books. This is a really sweet, really heartwarming story. It kind of has that added element of magic or magical realism. It is written in quite a simple way, I would say, but it succeeds in hiding some very touching messages about grief, human connection, and of course, books. Rintaro is very lost at the beginning of the book. He is a self-proclaimed hikikomori, who is a person who has chosen to live in isolation from the rest of society. However, throughout the book, we see him move out of his solitary ways and start to not only engage with those around him, but really start to care about the people around him. Our cat acts as our typical enigmatic guide through this mystical world that Rintaro has been drawn into. Not a lot of information is given about them. We know that their name is Tiger, but that's kind of it. We don't know where they came from, why they have come to Rintaro, and how they kind of fit into the bigger picture of everything. But I found that this just kind of adds to the charm and the quirkiness of the story because cats as an animal are very mysterious, so I think it kind of works. Even though the story is linear and it follows Rintaro through the whole book, it still has a bit of a kind of an episodic feel, as each labyrinth that Rintaro faces seems like its own little story. I think that this definitely fits the magical and the quirky and does have a bit of a cozy feel to it. The magic itself, would say sits kind of somewhere between kind of more legitimate fantasy and a magical realism feel. It has kind of a little bit more of a kind of world building than typical magical realism books, I think, do have. There's a sequel coming out that was just translated into English in February called The Cat Who Saved the Library. And from what I can tell, it follows the cat and not the human character. So I think that Rintaro and Sayo are going to be left behind. And our tabby cat is now going to be interacting with somebody new. So I'll probably pick this one up to see what our tabby cat is up to next. But I would say that if you like a kind of cozy-esque story about the power of books, touch of magic, and of course a talking cat, then The Cat Who Saved Books by Sosuke Natsukawa, I think would be a really good fit for you.
So Sadie, cats, cozy, not cozy.
Oh, 100% cozy. Of course.
In the process of recording this podcast, Emma admitted that her cat, bites her.
Yeah, Kara does that to me sometimes too. Yeah. But if you just so you have the fuzzy blanket on top of you, and then the cat comes up and curls up into their little ball, and they're doing their biscuits, they're kneading, they're purring, they're soft. You can't really tell the difference between their fur and the blanket because they're both so soft, and you're just kind of snuggled up, and yeah.
And then they sink their little needle teeth into your flesh. Well, if anything, this has proved that the definition of cozy is not universal in any way. You can have many opinions about coziness, and you can experience coziness in a multitude of ways. So thank you so much to my book friends and to our book friend listeners for sharing us in this very comfy, cozy episode. We hope that despite the grim, horrible, dispiriting weather or cheerful, cozy, wonderful autumnal vibes, depending on who you're talking to, that you have a wonderful day full of wonderful reads. Bye-bye.